I want to try something different today. This episode is designed in a way you haven't heard on this show before. I'm not going to explain it yet, just bear with me and pay attention. Not so much to what I'm saying, but how I'm saying it. That's all I'm going to say for now. There's something I've been thinking about lately that starts on a street corner and ends somewhere much more unsettling. If you stand on a corner in any city and look up at nothing, just tilt your head back, stare at an empty patch of sky, something interesting happens. People walking past start looking up too. They don't know why, nobody told them to, and there's nothing to see there. But the mere fact that you're looking up is enough to make them look up too. It's called social proof, and it's one of the most powerful forces in human nature. We're wired to follow the attention of other people. We assume that if somebody else is looking at something, there must be something worth looking at. We don't verify or question it, we just look. Same thing happens when people start running. You don't ask where they're going or why. You feel it before you think about it. Your body wants to move in the same direction before your brain has even decided whether it's worth moving. We trust cues, follow signals, and assume the information being presented to us reflects something real. And for most of our lives, that assumption worked. If you heard a voice, it was that person. If you saw a face, it was real. If someone left you a voicemail, it came from them. Those weren't guesses, they were fair assumptions. Well, they aren't anymore. A while back, I ran an episode of this podcast that was different. You probably don't remember it as being any different, and that's the point. I cloned my own voice using audio from this show, the same audio that's been sitting out there publicly for anyone to access, and I created a synthetic cloned version of my voice that could say anything I typed into it, and then I used that voice for an episode and released it without telling anyone. Nobody noticed. Not one message or comment about it. Not a single person reached out and said something sounded off, slightly different or wrong. What that means is the thing you rely on to recognize me, your ear, instinct, and your sense of familiarity of how I sound, is not reliable in the way you think it is. It feels reliable, but right now, in this episode, you're demonstrating that to yourself in real time. Here's what's actually required to clone someone's voice. A sample of their voice. That's it. Not a studio recording or hours of material. A voicemail, a short clip, a social media post, something that's publicly available to everyone. And use any one of several tools that are now readily available, and within minutes you have a voice that doesn't just sound close, it sounds exactly the same. Same cadence, same tone, same way of landing a sentence, same pause before making a point. And it can say anything you type into it. Anything. I've spent 32 years in radio, and I want to tell you right now that I'm watching this happening in real time. The voices you're hearing on some stations, not mine, are increasingly not human. Not all of them, not yet, but the number is growing and the pace is accelerating, and the gap between synthetic radio voice and human one has changed to the point where a listener cannot reliably tell the difference. Sometimes full segments, AI traffic reports, news reports, they talk in between songs and sound like a person who has opinions, a personality, and somewhere to be after the shift ends. It doesn't. You wouldn't know that from listening. People don't even notice. Or they do notice and don't care enough for it to change anything. The research says when listeners are told after the fact that a segment was AI generated, most say they couldn't tell. And their experience of the content wasn't significantly changed when they found out, which means the thing that made human broadcasters valuable, their presence or sense of the real person was on the other end of the signal, choosing words, meaning them, apparently isn't something most listeners are consciously tracking. And that's a hard thing to sit with when you've spent 3 decades trying to be good at exactly that. Podcasters are the same. There are many shows right now with real audiences that are entirely AI generated. The voice is synthetic, the script is AI written, the host has never had a thought or feeling or bad day in their life because they don't have a life. And people subscribe, they leave reviews saying how much they enjoyed it for a host that doesn't exist. What feels authentic and what actually is real are no longer reliably connected. You recognize my voice, you've been listening to enough, and you feel like you know how I think, how I build to something, what I sound like when I'm being straight with you versus when I'm exaggerating to make a point. But I just told you I've already done this, already ran a clone version of my voice on this show, already let you listen to something that wasn't me and watched you not notice. So what are you trusting right now? You're trusting your ear, your familiarity, the accumulated sense of knowing what I sound like built up over 60 episodes. And I'm telling you that sense of knowing and that feeling of recognition is exactly what voice cloning is designed to replicate. That's the target. The technology is built to fool people who know the voice. Because strangers don't automatically trust a voice, familiarity is what creates trust. The documented cases of this are already real. People on video calls with someone they thought they knew, a face that looked right, a voice that sounded right, an interaction that felt completely normal, and none of it was real. And they believed it because everything matched what they expected. Here's what actually happened in this episode. At several points during what you just listened to, the voice you heard was not me. It was a clone. I'm not going to tell you where, but go back and listen. See if you can find them. Pay attention to the pacing, the tone, the way certain sentences landed versus others. Trust your instincts. Most of you won't be able to find them. Some of you will be convinced you can. Something nagged at you, a particular moment felt slightly off. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're pattern matching onto something that was actually me and calling it the clone because now you're looking for it everywhere. That's the thing about doubt. Once it's introduced, it doesn't stay where you put it. So what just happened here? You listened to this episode, followed it, had a reaction to it, and at multiple points, the voice producing those reactions wasn't a person. It was a clone, a very accurate approximation of something real that was, in fact, not real. And you didn't know. It's probably not because you weren't paying attention or that you're unsophisticated. It's that technology is good enough now that paying attention doesn't help. If you couldn't detect it here in a show you've been listening to for over a year with a voice you've heard countless hours of, in an episode that literally told you what was going to happen before it started, what does that tell you about every other piece of audio you hear or video you see? Every voicemail that sounds like someone you know, or podcast that feels authentic and present and real. The feeling of recognition is not proof of anything anymore. It's just a feeling. The most unsettling part is you already knew that it was possible. You've heard about voice cloning, you've seen the headlines, you knew going into this episode that it was going to happen somewhere, and it still didn't help you. Knowing something exists and being able to detect it when it's actually happening are completely different. I'm not going to tell you to stop trusting what you hear. That's not a livable position. You can't run audio forensics on every conversation. At some point, you have to operate on reasonable trust or you can't function. But there's reasonable trust and automatic trust. Automatic trust is a shortcut all of us have been running our entire lives. If it sounds right, it's real. If it looks right, it's got to be real. The familiarity is there, so it seems legitimate. That was a safe way to operate a long time ago. It isn't anymore. It means knowing that a voicemail in someone's voice is not the same thing as hearing from that person. It means the podcast host who sounds completely human might not be. It means understanding that the cues you've always used to establish what's real have been compromised in ways most people don't really believe yet. You just experienced that firsthand. You came in knowing what was going to happen. You still couldn't stop it. Now you know something you can't unknow. A voice being familiar doesn't mean it's real. It just means someone had a good sample.